This podcast deals with themes and topics that may not be suitable for young audiences. Listener discretion is advised. Hi, friend. Welcome back to another episode of the Negligence series on Dylan-Redwine. Before we get into this episode, I need to thank some people. I need to thank Michelle Marsh for her generous Patreon and coffee contributions. It means so much to me. Thank you very much for your support. And I also need to thank Karen Vega for your generous donation on ko-fi.com/true consequences. If you want to support this show, you can go to patreon.com/true consequences or go to ko-fi.com/true consequences. There's also an option on my link tree, which is pasted below in the show notes, that will allow you to make a direct contribution through PayPal. I really appreciate it. You guys are helping me make my dream come true and also helping to help other families that need justice. The worst possible scenario. We all think about it often. It haunts us. Feels sometimes to those of us who have experienced trauma that it haunts us to a greater extent. The worst possible scenario for a parent is that their child would go missing or be harmed. This is what happened to the family of Dylan-Redwine on the afternoon, November 19th, 2012. The worst possible scenario. Elaine Hall, Dylan's mom, received a text at work. A text that would send her down a path of pain and fear that no parent wants to experience. The text read, "Elaine, I am wondering if you have heard from Dylan. I've been trying to reach him all afternoon." My name is Eric Carter-Landin, and this is Season 5 of True Consequences. Negligence, the Dylan-Redwine story. Before we get too far into this, let's take a step back to a vacation in the summer of 2011. Mark, Cory, and Dylan took a trip to the Midwest. This was a road trip that involved several states and visits to multiple lakes. It was supposed to be a fun vacation, and it was, until Dylan stumbled upon some photographs on his father's computer. Listen to Cory talk about his trip.
So, Mr. Redwine, in 2011, did you and Dylan go together on a trip with the defendant?
Yes.
Where did you go?
We went to Cleveland, Ohio, on a little road trip, and went up to Detroit and just kind of spent Father's Day up in that part of the country, just seeing baseball games and race car races and stuff like that.
Did you spend the entire trip on the road?
Yes.
How did the trip start off? Did it start off well?
Yeah. Me and my brother got a call. Mark had just flown into town, so he called me, asked him to come pick him up. So we went. Me and my brother went to his house, or went to the airport, and picked Mark up. And then from the airport, we went back up to his house for the night, where we stayed, just to where we could get an early start on the morning.
Okay. And then you drove off to the East Coast?
We drove up through Kansas and Iowa, and we're headed up to the lakes up there, Cleveland, Michigan, those states up there.
Was there a point in time in that trip that Mark went off somewhere?
Yeah, there was a few times where, he would leave, and me and Dylan would just hang out together.
And was there a point in time when Dylan used the defendant's computer?
Yes.
Did he find something on the computer?
Yes.
Can you explain to the jury what he found?
He found pictures of Mark dressed in women's clothing, wearing a diaper, taking selfies of him wearing the clothing, wearing the diaper, eating the feces that was in the diaper, and just that's pretty much it.
Dylan, back in 2011, was he 12 years old?
I believe so, yeah.
How did he react to seeing those photographs of his father?
He was pretty disgusted. It was something that he kind of had to try to contain himself. When we found the pictures, we were in the hotel room with Mark at the time, and Mark was sleeping, and Dylan was on his laptop, and I walked into the room. I had a conversation with my current wife, just checking up on her since I was on the road. And when I walked into the room, Dylan just kind of grabbed my attention, was trying to be quiet, but obviously was energetic, kind of, you know, like, come here, I got to show you this, I got to show you this, kept pulling me, and then he took me into the bathroom where we closed the door and locked it, and that's when he showed me the pictures that he had found.
Did it impact his view of the defendant moving forward?
Yes.
So I need to warn you that these photographs are extremely graphic, and if you go looking for them, you will find them. I wanted to just give fair warning because they're not for the weak of stomach. This situation caused tension between the boys and their dad. Dylan lost all respect for his dad in that moment. Dylan was no longer interested in spending time with Mark after this incident. Despite all of this, he still went on another road trip with Mark over Labor Day of 2012. Mark took Dylan on a road trip to Boston to see a Red Sox game. And while on this trip, Dylan started to text Cory. Here's what Cory has to say about that text exchange.
Were there times that Dylan was upset with the way the defendant talked about you or your mother?
Yes.
Could you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, I know he, or Mark, was, you know, or had voiced his opinion to Dylan on what we were, and clearly Dylan never shared the same opinion. So he got frustrated when, you know, two people that Dylan loved and cared about were not being represented correctly in Dylan's eyes.
Now, did you receive a phone call at one point while Dylan was on the baseball trip when he was particularly upset?
Yeah.
Can you explain that to the jury?
Yeah, he called me on the trip, and I was in a movie at the time, so I wasn't able to respond directly. So he called me a few times, and then by I want to say the third or fourth call, I knew that something was going on. So I had left the movie and then walked out, checked my phone, and seen that Dylan had called and texted me about asking for the pictures previously shown.
When you walked out of the movie, were there already texts waiting on your phone?
Yeah, there was, I want to say probably 3 to 4 texts at that time with 5 or 6 missed calls.
And what was Dylan asking, if anything?
He was asking for me to send him those pictures. He said, hey, send me those poop pics of Papa because he gave me a speech about you guys being a bad example, and I want to show him what he really is.
Now, did you learn from your phone calls with Dylan and conversations with Dylan what was going on around this point in time between Dylan and the defendant?
Briefly, I don't recall, you know, any specifics between Dylan or Mark, but I do remember just the discussion I had with Dylan.
There was an argument with the defendant?
Yes.
He was upset about that?
Yes.
Mr. Redwine, why was Dylan upset now?
Because him and Mark had an altercation.
What was his next text message to you shortly thereafter?
He was asking me if I had gotten them yet.
What exactly did the text say at 23:03?
He said, you got him, or hey, or you got him yet? And then he sent a duplicate moment, or roughly, you know, 12 minutes later.
So he sent you got him yet at 23:03?
Yes.
Did he send it again?
Yes.
When did he send it again?
At 23:15.
Then did he send again the request you at 2319.
Yeah, he sent me the request to go, or send him the pictures to show Mark like he really is.
So, Mr. Redwine, how many times, and I'll scroll up and scroll down, how many times did your brother ask you for those pictures that evening while he was on the trip in a row after that?
I believe 7. I believe there's one more at the
One
way top.
He asked you over and over. As you scroll down, did you in fact send the pictures to your brother?
No, I did not.
Why not?
I just wanted to see how the day was going to go and follow up with him the previous day and just see if their relationship was okay or what steps I needed to take.
So the next day you followed up with him?
Yes.
Did you have concerns about if they were in an argument sending those photographs to Dylan in that context?
Yes.
Why?
I was just worried about where Dylan was, and I didn't want any more confrontation with Dylan being as upset as he was and sending those messages. I didn't really want to send something more to fuel a bigger fire.
So as he was asking, did you ever send the pictures to Dylan on that occasion?
No.
And then moving on to the next text messages, what did you tell him at 23:38 hours?
I told him that my email had gotten wiped out.
And then did you speak with him after that the next day?
Yes.
And can you just read those texts to the jury, starting with Dylan's first one the next day at 12:16?
Yeah, he said, "What's up?" And then I replied, "I just wanted to see how you were doing." And then he responded, "I'm fine." And then I followed up and asked, "Okay, just checking, what are you doing today?" And he said, "Going to Pittsburgh."
So is it your impression that after you didn't send the photographs, that argument had ended and the trip moved on the next day?
Yeah, and when Dylan responded going to Pittsburgh, I had assumed that everything was okay, and Dylan was fine.
Dylan told his mom prior to his visit over Thanksgiving that he did not want to go. He was so adamant that Elaine called her lawyer to ask what she could do and if she could get away with not sending him to his dad. The lawyer let her know that there wasn't much that she could do as it was a court order and they had to obey the court. Let's listen to the audio of Amber Harrison discussing this.
And did Dylan tell you his thoughts on where he wanted to live?
Yes, he did.
And what did he tell you?
He wanted to live with his mother.
Did he tell you did you watch the relationship firsthand between Dylan and Mark Redwine over the years at all?
I never saw Mark or Mr. Redwine over the years. I do know that over the years the relationship deteriorated because it was clear that Dylan didn't want to go visit with his father, just based on things that I had seen.
Did he ever voice concerns to you about going to see his father closer to the time of the Thanksgiving visit?
Yes, when we met before the September hearing on the motion to relocate.
What were Dylan's concerns?
He was not comfortable around his father. He disclosed to me that he had seen the pictures that creeped him out and made him feel very uncomfortable.
Then, when the hearing occurred, how does that hearing work? For example, does Dylan get input?
Because of his age, we filed a motion for him to be able to testify or to be interviewed by the judge in chambers. That request was granted. So during the hearing, Dylan was taken into chambers by Judge Dickinson and was interviewed in private by Judge Dickinson.
Okay. And then is that the purpose of that interview, to get Dylan's input on where he wants to live?
Yes, sir.
And then also you mentioned the pictures. Are those I'll refer to them as compromising personal photographs, as those are the pictures?
Yes, sir.
Did he describe them in detail to you, however?
No, he didn't.
Okay, what did he tell you about them or them upsetting him? What did he?
He told me they were creepy pictures, and he told me he was creeped out by it, and he didn't want to visit with his father. I personally have never seen the pictures, so, but I'd heard about them, so I knew what they were.
And then going into going into the hearing itself, what did the court ultimately decide after hearing from Dylan and hearing from the parties with result to custody, with regard to custody?
The court granted Ms. Hall's motion to relocate, meaning that Dylan would be residing with her primarily up in Colorado Springs, and Mr. Redwine was granted visitation rights.
Was there a specific visit that he was granted at the time of that hearing?
I believe it was a Thanksgiving visit.
And that was a part of that same order that had given custody primarily to Ms. Hall?
Yes, sir.
Was that in fact a court order?
Yes, it was.
Now, I want to talk specifically about that visit. Did you talk with Dylan after the hearing about whether he wanted to go on that visit to see his father for Thanksgiving?
I do recall speaking to Ms. Hall. I believe Dylan was in the background, but I did not speak to Dylan directly.
Were you asked legal advice?
Yes, I was.
What were you asked about that trip?
I was asked if there was any options to putting Dylan on the plane.
Who asked you?
Ms. Hall.
So, based on the question you were asked, did you have to give Ms. Hall a response as to whether or not Dylan had to get on that airplane?
I did give her legal advice.
What did you tell her? Take your time, ma'am, and there are tissues to your left as well.
I told her that she had to put Dylan on the plane or she would be charged with contempt of court.
Are you okay to proceed, or do you need a second? Ms. Harrison, how did you find out that Dylan Redwine was missing?
I received a phone call from Elaine.
When did you receive that phone call?
The day after Dylan arrived in Durango.
You'll recall from the last episode, Mark and Elaine had a custody hearing right after the trip to Boston. This was a hearing to determine if Elaine and Dylan could move to the Colorado Springs area with permission from the court. Mark fought pretty hard to try and become a custodial parent to Dylan in that trial. The result of that case can be heard in the previous episode. If you haven't listened to that episode first, I recommend going back and listening before continuing on with this one. Let's listen to Elaine talk about the trip to Durango in mid-November 2012.
I'm going to turn now to November 2012. When was the last time you saw your son, Dylan?
When I put him on the plane to go to Durango, so November 18th.
And where were you specifically? What airport?
Colorado Springs Airport.
Tell the jury about that moment.
Dylan was supposed to fly out on the 17th of November, but there was some problem with the plane. So they rescheduled him to board on November 18th. And so we went to the airport, and I got one of those passes that you can do with minors. And we went and had some lunch at the airport, and then I took him to the gate. He had I think he's switching planes in Denver, so we just discussed, text me when you get to Denver and let me know that you get on the plane, okay? And then I hugged him.
So he's flying out of Colorado Springs.
Yes.
Approximately what time of day was the flight leaving?
It's like mid-afternoon, I believe.
You mentioned the flight was going to go first to Denver.
Yes.
and then ultimately to Durango.
Yes.
You mentioned a pass that you can get for minors. For those that don't know what you're referring to, what is that and what did it allow you to do?
It's a guardian pass, if you will, and it just allows me to go back to Dylan's gate, because normally you have to be a ticketed passenger to get back in the area, the security area. And so I had to get one of those so that I could see him off.
And you mentioned hugging Dylan. Where did that happen within the airport?
As he was boarding his plane, he was walking away, and he always called me Moti, which is German for mom. And I said, oh, you're too old to give your mom a hug. And he came back and gave me a hug.
Where was he going?
Ultimately, his destination was Durango
Visit
to visit his father, Mark.
Dylan wants to go.
You know, people ask me that question. It's a hard question to answer. He got bored up in Vicedo. He was often there alone, and he wanted to see his friends in Bayfield. I mean, that was really important to him.
Was there a reason he had to go?
It was a court order.
For this November 2012 trip, were you under the impression that Dylan did not want to go to his father's house?
Yes.
How'd you know that?
Dylan told me.
And did you talk about it at length with Dylan?
Yes.
Based on those conversations with Dylan, what did you do to check to see if Dylan actually had to go on the trip?
I contacted my attorney at the time and asked if there was anything we could do. And she basically said it was a court order and I would be in violation of the court and that we would have to work on this in the future.
Who was your attorney at the time?
Amber Harrison.
Harrison told you that due to court order, Dylan had to go visit with his father for Thanksgiving holiday.
Yes.
What prompted you to reach out to Ms. Harrison to check on that?
Because Dylan was pretty adamant that he wanted to be with us at Thanksgiving, especially since his Oma, which is my mother, was diagnosed with cancer. And he wanted to spend that Thanksgiving with my side of the family and with her. I texted you and Dylan tried calling you. His flight was canceled, as I'm sure you knew, as the attendant told me they sent a message to your email. His flight was rescheduled for tomorrow. You should have told me it was canceled. This is Elaine, and you know that.
What is that about?
When I moved from Durango to Colorado Springs area, I took Cory's phone number because Cory was on his own and got his own phone plan and everything. So because Cory's phone was under my plan, I just took his phone number and moved it over to me. And Mark had always...
Can you stop you there for one
Yes.
second? So this is you saying, this is me, Elaine.
Yes.
And how about the part about, I'm sure you knew, as the attendant told me they sent a message to your email. What's that about?
Well, just that when we showed up at the airport to get Dylan on the airplane, the gal told me that the flight was canceled and it was sent to Mark's email, and she gave me the email address.
You were unaware of that when you went to the airport on November 17th.
Yes.
So what is the plan after the flight's canceled on November 17th?
A new flight the next day was booked.
What did Dylan do the night of November 17th into November 8th?
He stayed with his friends, Joe, Adam, and Kristen on Artistic. He hung out with them.
Whose house did he stay at?
Joe's grandfather's house?
Was the night of November 17th into November 8th?
Yes.
When did you next see Dylan?
On November 18th,
Where'd you see him?
I went to Joe's grandfather's house, and then we still had some stuff in our artistic house, so we stopped by there, and then we left
Go to where?
to go to the airport.
Go to the airport on November 18th for the rescheduled flight.
Yes.
Who do we have in the blue text box here?
That's Dylan.
Green text box is,
Me.
so can you read the first text from Dylan to you, please?
I'm on the plane to Durango,
Date of that text?
November 18th, 2012.
Time there says 16:28, which is military time, excuse me. So if you subtract 12 hours, it's 4:28 p.m. I'm on the plane to Durango. What was the significance of that text message? In other words, what did that mean? Where was Dylan in his course of travel that day?
I think that's when he landed in Denver and went to the other plane in Denver to get on the plane to Durango.
And how do you respond at 4:36 p.m.?
Oh, good. You did well, son. Proud of you. I love you, and thanks for keeping in touch so well. You're a flying pro.
And at 5:21 p.m., what do you text your son, Dylan?
You land in Durango, son?
So the abbreviation DGO is for Durango.
Yes.
We have a response from Dylan on the screen at 5:49 p.m. What does Dylan say?
Just did.
Send another text to Dylan at 7:03 p.m. on November 18th.
Your dad get you, son?
7:06 on November 18th. How does Dylan respond?
Yes, with a frowny face.
You respond to Dylan 6 minutes later at 7:12 p.m. What do you say?
I miss you already, but try and have fun.
Next text to Dylan that same evening, November 18th, 2012, at 10:09 p.m. What do you text to Dylan at that point?
How's it going, son? You okay?
Dylan again.
No.
Last communication you have with Dylan was the yes with a frowny face.
Yes.
Send another text. 12:07 p.m., so it's 7 minutes after noon on November 19th. And what do you say?
How's it going, son? You okay?
All right, Ms. Hall, I know this is, I can only imagine how hard this is. I'm really sorry.
Thank you.
Time, if you need.
I'm okay.
The 10:09 text from the night before. You say, how's it going, son? You okay? Do you hear back from Dylan that night?
No.
Hear back from Dylan ever again?
No.
Go to that next text message the next day, 12:07 p.m. It's November 19th. Do you see that text message in that exhibit?
Yes.
What do you say in that text message on November 19th at 12:07 p.m.?
How you doing, son? I miss you.
The final text message in this exhibit is a text message that you send at 2:35 a.m. on November 20th. What do you say in that text message, Ms. Hall?
Sorry.
Your time.
I said, Dylan, please be safe. Mom is here to come get you, son.
Now let's hear from Dylan's childhood friend, Ryan Nava, and what happened from the time Dylan left the Colorado Springs airport and the time he was supposed to arrive at Ryan's house the following morning.
And do you recall on November 18th, 2012, Dylan contacting you about a visit to Bayfield.
Yes, I do.
Can you just, in your own words, tell the jury about that contact and the communication you had with Dylan?
Yes, he had informed me that he was coming to the area. I myself was on the way back to this area, the Bayfield area, to watch. I was coming back from watching my brother play football, and he had expressed, like he did in the past, that he wanted to hang out when he was coming to Bayfield. So we made plans to meet up, and actually he was going to spend the night. I asked if he could spend the night at my mother's house, which at the time was across Bayfield. My mother said no, so I went to my grandmother and said, hey, can I stay at your house and can Dylan stay with me? And she said yes. So we had, made plans through text to hang out, him to come stay the night.
Where were you coming from? I know you said your brother's football game, but where was that?
Also in it was in the Colorado Springs area.
Did Dylan spend the night at your grandmother's with you?
No.
What was the reason for that?
He didn't show up. Never showed up.
Did he tell you that he couldn't come?
He did.
And is that conversation via text taking place on November 18th of 2012?
Yes, it is.
The blue text box that you see on the left-hand side of the screen, who are those text messages from?
Those are from dylan-redwine, for sure.
And how about the green text box?
That's me. That's me.
So we see here on the left-hand side of the screen, Dylan contacts you around 11:51 in the morning on November 18th.
Yes.
You respond with WTF.
Yes.
He then says, at 11:52, I'm coming to Bayfield.
Yes.
What do you respond to Dylan, and what does he say back?
I told him I was coming home from the Denver, Colorado Springs area. Asked him if he wanted to hang out tomorrow, and I was grounded.
We'll stop there. What does Dylan say to you at around 12:05 on November 18th?
He asked me if he can stay with me tonight, as in stay the night.
What do you say in response, Mr. Nava?
I said, if we get back in time, yeah.
At this point in time, are you still on the road from the Springs or Denver area back to Bayfield?
Yes.
What does Dylan say in response to that at 12:07 p.m.?
He says, if I don't, as in if I don't get back in time, he would stay with Wes and then ditch him in the morning to come hang out.
So you had that plan. The plan was Dylan would arrive, go to his friend Wes's house, and then come spend the night with you at your grandmother's house.
Yes.
We'll go to the bottom of page 3.
Texted him, I'm in Pagosa coming, as in I was coming to Bayfield. And he randomly just changed his plan. He said, can't come, sorry, I'll hang tomorrow. And I told him, okay.
You can't come, sorry, I'll hang tomorrow. That's at 6:57 p.m. on November 18th.
Yes.
And it looks like at 7:09, the top of page 7, you ask him why.
Yes.
What does he say in response?
IDK, which means I don't know.
What do you ask him, Mr. Nava?
I asked him, did your dad say no?
What does Dylan say?
He said, yeah. And I said, oh, okay. But he had asked if he could come over early, like 6:30 early tomorrow. I told him, yeah. And he said, you better let me in. I said, I will. I'm going to be at my GMOS, my grandmother's, my residence right now.
Okay. So at this point, Dylan has told you that his father has said he cannot sleep over with you.
Yes.
And the two of you make a plan. We'll just scroll back up a little bit here. That text message from Dylan to you at 20:02 or 8:02 p.m., Mr. Nava?
Yes.
What does he ask?
He asked can I come over early, like 6:30 early tomorrow. He wanted to come hang out with me in the morning at 6:30 the next day, the following day. You better let me in. And he's referring to, at 6:30 in the morning, I better let him in my grandmother's house. And I tell him I will, and I told him I'm going to be at my grandma's, my GMOS, my grandma's.
What does Dylan say in response at 8:05 p.m. on November 18th?
he says, I call your ass all day if you don't. And he meant he'll call me all day if I don't let him in my grandmother's house at 6:30 in the morning. I told him, okay. I told him, call me when you get here, too.
What happened when you woke up the next morning, Mr. Nava?
I set an alarm, woke up, and I expected him to be there or to wake up by him knocking on that sliding door. And thought it was a little weird. Thought it was weird that he was not there because I know he wanted to hang out, and I wanted to hang out with him, too. And so I just started asking him, where are you? Simple.
When you woke up and you realized Dylan was not there, what did you do besides text message? What did you do in terms of your own actions?
I got up and I went outside to look for him. Maybe he was sitting out on we have a patio area. Like I said, he's familiar with that part of my grandmother's home. So I went outside and I took a look around.
Dylan there?
No, sir.
Then you mentioned the text message to him at 6:46 a.m. on November 19th. What do you text Dylan?
Where are you?
You ever get a response from Dylan?
No.
Do you attempt at any point that morning to call Dylan?
I did.
And what happened when you called Dylan?
He didn't answer the phone.
Then at 10:08 a.m. on November 19th, we see another text message on the screen. Can you tell the jury about that, please?
Yes. I texted him, told him, come to Nando's. At that time, when I sent that text, come to Nando's, some time had passed from when I had woke up. And I decided to make a backup plan and go hang out with Nando. And I remember thinking, well, I don't know why he's not here, but whenever he is ready to hang out, I want to let him know where I'm going to be so we can all hang out. We had made plans to hang out, all of us, Nando, me, him. So I just let him know my secondary plan at 10:08. So when he was ready to hang out, he could know where to find me.
Dylan ever come that day?
No, sir.
You and Fernando were at Fernando's house the entire day on November 19th.
Yes.
You never hear from or see Dylan that day?
No, I don't.
Who did you see from the Redwine family later that afternoon?
I saw Mark Redwine.
Approximately what time did you see the defendant?
I don't remember. It was in the afternoon, past noon, for sure.
Where did you see him?
At Fernando Stubbs' house, where I was at.
What was the reason the defendant had come to Fernando's house?
I remember him saying he was looking for Dylan. He didn't know where he was, and he thought he might be here, or at Fernando's.
What do you text Dylan at 4:12 p.m.?
I told him, dude, your dad's looking for you, as a result of Mark coming to Fernando's and saying he didn't know where he was at.
Now it's late afternoon on November 19th.
Yes, yeah.
And when had you last heard from Dylan?
I hadn't heard from him since 11/18/2012, and I don't know military time, but at night, the night of November 18th, 2012 was the last time I heard from Dylan.
And one of his last texts to you was that he was going to call your butt all day if you didn't open that sliding door.
Yes.
And did he even call you once that day?
No, he didn't. So after I told him his dad was looking for him, texted him again, are you all right, dude? I started becoming very worried. I was already a little confused by his actions, but when I sent him, are you all right, dude? I remember I became more worried. And later I told him, dude, you need to call somebody, anybody, as soon as possible. We all worried about you. Your mom called and she's worried, bro. Seriously, and down another text, I told him, seriously, when you get the message, call someone. I just wanted him to really call somebody because something was not right.
The text message, and it says 1959, 7:59 p.m., Mr. Nava. You say your mom called.
Yes.
text message to Dylan. So what had happened? Had his mom called you?
Yes, I don't remember when. I believe his mom called me. She told me she hadn't heard from him. That's the only thing I remember about that.
Can you tell the jury what were the next several days and weeks like?
Hard, worrisome. The only thing that me and my friends wanted to do was be together, just because we couldn't find Dylan, and the only topic on my friends' mind, my parents, their parents' mind was Dylan. It was a hard time because we had a brother missing.
Going back to the text that Elaine received. Elaine, wondering if you have heard from Dylan. I've been trying to reach him all afternoon. Next time on Negligence, the dylan-redwine story.
I'll describe Dylan as a good friend, outgoing, funny. To us, he was a prankster a little bit. We all like to play jokes on each other. So, a funny guy, good guy, outgoing.
How would you describe Dylan?
He was a pretty fiery kid. He had a little bit of a temper. He was loud, and he was pretty, at least with me, he was loud. He was just an overall pretty fun, rowdy, short-tempered kid.
Now, there was a common thread among the friends and family of Dylan, and that fact was that everyone shared the opinion that Dylan did not want to go visit his dad for Thanksgiving. It was enough that his grandmother was terminally ill, but if you couple that with the strain that was already happening between Mark and Dylan, it makes sense that he wouldn't want to go there.